This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
Welcome to Worse Than You with me, Mo Fry-Pasek. I'm Mo, and every week I'm asking today's most captivating artists how they got their acts together. The show isn't about their best or most famous work. It's about the work that means the most to them, represents their creative process, and why they make their art. This week's guest is a writer and actor whose TV and film credits include Search Party, Shameless, The High Note, and 30 Rock. He's the co-creator and star of the cult lo-fi series Jeffrey and Cole Casserole with Cola Scola. He is the author of the young adult novels Drag Teen and A Very, Very Bad Thing. And his debut book for adults, Self-Sabotage, is out this week. Please welcome to the pod, Jeffery Self. Ready, set, show! Okay, it's game time.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
Welcome!
How's it going?
It's going really good. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Where are you from?
I'm originally from Wisconsin,
Okay.
but I was in New York for like 10 years, in Boston for school, and then LA.
Lovely.
How about you?
Georgia, grew up, born and raised until I was 17. And then I went to college briefly in North Carolina. And then I moved to New York. And then I was in LA for like 13 years. And then I just moved back to New York a year and a half ago.
But a lot of this is covered in your new book.
That's right.
Transition.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Very good. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
My new book, which I'm so excited about, it's called Self-Sabotage and Other Ways I've Spent My Time. And it's right here. I'll hold it up.
Love that.
Love. It's like I just got the copies like 2 weeks ago. And it's so weird. Like it's just so weird to like.
Oh, isn't that surreal?
Yeah, it's such a surreal thing. And so it's out anywhere books are sold and in audio read by me.
How was that?
So weird. Because so the book is like personal essays and very like personal. And it was so strange because, you creating anything, you work on it for years and years and you're in this very insular kind of experience with it usually, especially with a book. Like, if you're writing a play, you're working with cast and designers and stuff, but like, or a movie, same thing. But like the book is just like you and like your editor and you're sending it to him. And it's just very, kind of feels like you're just sending like emails back and forth to someone that's like, it's, like a friend. And then,
Therapy.
Yeah. And then, then it's over and then you go through this copywriting process. And then like the copywriting process kind of like makes everything feel like numb, like you don't really, it all kind of becomes clinical and like, is this word fits better and da-da-da, we don't need these words and da-da-da-da, and there's a typo here. So it kind of like takes all the emotion out, right?
But did that bring up new emotion, like to like treat your own stories in that way?
Kind of not in the like in the editing process actually, but like when it gets down to like literally like looking at what they're going to print in the galley, like it becomes so mechanical of just like looking for typos and stuff that kind of removes the emotion, I felt like, for me. And then though, like a few months later, having to stand in a recording studio with like you and some director on Zoom and a technician and read all this stuff out loud, with two strangers that is about you. It was very weird in like a windowless room. Like it's so strange and torturous.
Also, like it strikes me like the vulnerable, because one, the book is so vulnerable, but in a way that is just facts as well in many ways. And so what I think is so funny to imagine, like they're giving you notes on the way you're reading, but then you have to like separate yourself from like, hey, was that story fine? Like,
right.
like,
yeah. Like I'd say something like, actually, that kind of feels like a bigger emotional thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I've already felt it. But then you're like, all right, I have to fucking like say it.
Oh, I have to act my own story.
It's weird. It's very weird. I couldn't stop thinking about like other people who've written, people who've written who've had really traumatic experiences and have written about them in books and then read it. I just can't fathom that experience. Because while mine's all very emotional and vulnerable, but it's not necessarily much. The trauma element of it is not as extreme as so many books, and it's just so fascinating to imagine that every audiobook I listen to is at one point that person's had to stand in a windowless room and read it out loud in front of strangers. It's oh, weird.
The first one that comes to mind is Mariah.
Oh, totally.
And she's a pro. She's a fucking pro because she also doesn't give it too much. She'll be like, then when I saw my brother fighting, I knew.
Yeah, totally.
I was never going to live like that.
Totally.
And it's that's still a choice. What? Oh.
Did you see her on? I know you're friends with Matt Rogers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you? She was on La Culturistas with Matt and Bowen, and it was such a good episode. And she, the way she couldn't come up with what an editor, the term editor, it was my favorite. She's and then the guy comes in after you've written it, and she's editor. It's
Heaven.
Iconic. It's brilliant. Yeah.
It was so funny to listen to. Process wise, because it's Matt knows that woman better than she knows herself because he loves her so much. Bowen is so observant and is so able to put himself in the mind of that person. So then she doesn't even realize, and bless her, but she doesn't have to, how much work these two are doing to create a space where it's easy for her to be that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so I loved listening to her just kind of because you there is the dance, right? There's the icon, and then there's also the people that allow that and create that space, and the way she got to playfully walk through. It was so interesting to listen to.
100%. Yeah. It's a great book. I mean, it's one of the more fun celebrity memoirs that have come out in a long time, besides the Barbara one.
I haven't listened to that. I'm not a Barbara girl, and not not because I have a strong feeling. Sure. I just never was.
I get it, whatever.
Yeah, but Sudi and Albertina, my dear friends, are this is their pope, and
it's a good book.
And the way they're I'm on hour 47 of the audiobook while reading along. But okay, to this point of perception and performance, I'm very interested because the book, there is so much self-awareness as well as it's almost commenting on itself while it's existing. And I'm kind of wondering where for you comes in the separation of you who experienced it and you who is turning it into art. Is it conscious?
I guess so. I think I'm someone who, anytime I experience something that might trigger me or feel negative, I feel like I'm someone who and usually it's based on my own behavior in my own actions. Something that's a negative outcome I find myself immediately trying to turn it into a story or an anecdote of some sort, because I think that I very much believe that taking pain and making it funny or relatable or just simply digestible kind of takes the poison out of it.
But is that a cope? Because it's I'm always upon myself. I'm always excited when I can turn something into art, but then I'm always do I need to feel through it first? Is this the way I feel through it? Do you know?
Totally.
There is that.
Totally. For example, with this book, I mean, so many of the things I talk about in the book, I talk about when I was a sex worker. I write a lot about that, and that, for example, I wanted to write that story and write those stories down for so long, and I started to over the course of 12, 15 years, and every time for a different reason, it just wasn't the time to take those stories and transform them into an actual story on the page. And, I played around with trying to do that with taking that story and make it a script or make it a solo play or a book of essays. But every time I tried, it was oh, it's not here yet. And for a while I would beat myself up about that and why I wasn't able to just immediately jump into turning something into a story with something like that. And it wasn't until, A, some distance from an experience like that, and B, therapy, and that I was I feel enough distance from this particular thing to write about it. Whereas something that some experiences though can happen yesterday and I'm writing in my journal about them the next day, and it feels the same feeling of like, I feel as engaged and feel as separate from it because whether something has less weight or something happens when you're in the right mindset to experience that thing. Sometimes that makes it easier to then jump into the step of turning it into something. Every experience though is unique and different in that way. And some things are ready to be written about and some things take 20 years to, be ready to write about.
Completely. And I adore, like whenever I write, and the play I wrote that this podcast was based on is like, I adore sort of meta, like things that are actively exemplifying the sort of things you're speaking about while you're experiencing them. So like my character is very self-aware. And so she's talking about all of her issues and she's aware of them, but it is pushing everybody away because she's kind of like, you can't, like, I'm the word, like, you can't diagnose me, like, you can't fix me, you can't whatever, because I'm so aware of it. And she's not wrong.
Right.
and it's this mix of the things where it's like the people watching were like, oh, you're saying like things that make sense, but it's still uncomfortable because there's no emotion. There's no personal connection with it. And I'm so interested because I think you are someone who has tried many things as far as performance goes. We're all doing it. But what I like to hear about that, because I as well, I have stories that I'm like, okay, does this resonate best as a one-person show? Does this resonate best as, should I do essays? Should I do this? And I'm always curious when I look back. I'm like, I wonder if this resonates best here now because this is where I feel safest in the medium, not maybe the story's best vehicle. Or does that even matter? Do you know what I mean?
Or it's like, oh, I'm just really in the mood to be writing in the form of a play and dialogue and then, right. And scene one, scene two. Like, yeah, I think, and sometimes like the desire, I mean, I have that sometimes where it's like, and sometimes it's motivated by, I really want to be writing something like this. Or sometimes it's motivated by, I need to pay a bunch of bills and I really need to sell a fucking half-hour pilot.
And I'm an artist and this is how I can make money.
But I know, and I've from every experience, like, yes, I can bang my head against a wall over and over and like try to come up with a half-hour, pitch of a show that fits this box that I've heard Max is buying, and it's like,
which everyone goes
totally.
Through this,
and it's like, and I've done that. And sometimes I've sold the thing and developed the thing and then they don't go anywhere or they do go somewhere or whatever. But it's like, I do know that like I'm not someone who I don't do well, trying to like force myself to do something based on, an external motivation that's not based on any kind of inspiration. Like I don't, and there are people who are so good at that. And I really find I get jealous of that ability, but I have definitely shot myself in the foot, I think many a time, being dazzled by the idea of writing a play or a pilot or whatever, when it was like, that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing in that moment.
Well, it's so funny because then, you always look back and it's like, is this the path I had to take? Or,
totally.
And like, but it's like, and yes and no, and forever and never. It's like, it's all part of this whole process. And I think especially this marriage of being like marketing and commerce and like, then also the freedom to like, just want to like lounge about and make art that is like beautiful and telling a story. And then also our own personal navigating the system in this way. And when you are self-aware, and other people might be like, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's like, you're constantly questioning yourself. You're going like, is this authentic? Is this where I should?
Yeah.
And it slows down the wheels.
Yeah. And is it something I want to spend the next few fucking years of my life on, Like, it's like,
that's such a weird aspect.
It's such a weird thing. It's like, yeah, you have a fun idea to write a script or whatever one day. And it's like, yeah, write it. But like, the reality is like, even if it's like a great first draft, you're going to be working on it for years, and like, and it's like, do I want to live with this thing? It's, it's like when you meet someone on a date, it's like, do I want to date this person? Or do I just want to fuck them for a night,
Say that.
Yeah. And it's like, sometimes you want to spend more time with something, but sometimes it's like, you have this stupid idea and it's like, just sort of fuck around with it, but don't put too much weight behind it as much as you would the bigger things that you're working on or that you really want to say. And sometimes those things take years to gestate, and it's like, that's okay.
And then there's the desire to like put like a few nuggets of the things you actually wanted to say into the thing where it like maybe isn't relevant at all. But you're like, I want to say these things.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm someone who often very much like compares myself to other people. How can you not? We literally have our phones at all times and just constantly seeing what everyone else is doing. And, it's a very competitive industry. And it's hard. Something I really struggle with is like, and because I'm so scattered and easily obsessive, I will see somebody do one thing and I'm like, oh, I should be doing that. And it's like, a week later, I'm like, why the fuck? I didn't want to do that. It's not something I can do. Like, it's like, and sometimes it's things that are within my potential wheelhouse or set of skills. And sometimes it's simply not. And it's just like, that just seemed like a cool thing to be doing. And it's like, well, no, that's not your lane, and like, that's okay.
I'm wondering though, if like maybe that is your process. Cause like hearing the book, like it's like the negative space of like, I always use the example of like, I think a lot of artists are the type who create by like, when someone's like, what do you want to eat? They're like, I don't know, but list things. And they say no to everything you list. And like, it kind of feels like that process where it's like, other artists are doing things and you're like, maybe that,
no. And the opposite of that though is the like, you should definitely still explore that thing, like, and to find out if it's not the thing, like you might go down that road and get a week down that road and go, okay, so it wasn't this thing, and that's okay. That's going to lead you to this next thing. But it's, it's a scary journey because for me at least, like when I'm going down the path of something creatively, it's like, well, I've made it this far. I can't turn back now because otherwise all that time is wasted. And the reality is like, it's not. It like, it got you to the next step or whatever. But like, it's easy to beat yourself up, I think, over, for me at least, of like feeling like time wasted when I pursue a project and I realize, okay, it ain't this. And it's something I've been working on, like giving myself grace on like, okay, it's fine if you went down that wormhole and it's not that.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Also, like, there are many ways up the mountain.
Totally,
like,
yeah.
I'm similar in that way where it's like, I remember at one point, like, I wasn't really inspired to like do a rewrite on my play. And then like someone I was dating was like, I really want to read it. And like all of a sudden it's like I had more, it's like, a crush can make you move the world. And thank God, because then I did a rewrite. But at the time, while it was happening, I was like, okay, so I have no internal artistic drive. I'm only wanting validation from a partner. I'm sick. And it's like, okay, fine. if that's what got it on the page. Yeah.
You know, I mean, as long as you're not hurting yourself or anyone else, like whatever gets you out of bed, you know?
How do you give yourself that grace though? Like, is that active?
I mean, it's like constantly like forcing myself to like, and talking about it in therapy and to my psychiatrist and like, and just sort of like constantly reminding myself that I have to, or otherwise I'm going to drive myself insane. So it's mostly that because I don't want to have to, you know, get locked up anytime soon. Summer's on the way.
It's a sign of the police.
But so that's a big motivator is, you know, trying not to lose it.
It's getting locked up, Bellevue. Big motivator.
We don't want it. I don't want it. If I'm going to get locked up, I really hope it's not in Manhattan. I want it to be somewhere.
Oh, well, I hope it's with Luigi.
I guess that is nice. But that would be nice. Isn't he just, what a dream. I literally was just...
Oh my God, did you see the sockless like sort of situation?
Of course. With the loafer? Yeah, of course. I mean,
oh my God.
He's a beautiful, beautiful man. You know who found his address that you can send him a letter is, do you know Lisa Traeger? I was just going to say it because I was listening to her last night when she was like, listen, okay, so this is what I found at the lawyer. Yeah, she like found it. And I reached out to her. I was like, she sent me the address. I want to send him my book, but
I love her
I want to send him my book, but because you can send books to people in prison, which I think is a really good thing to do.
Are you going to be a part of the fabric of this American story?
I want to.
Is he going to read your book?
I want to be. I mean, ultimately, it's like... But ultimately, like, what am I really after here? I want him to read my book and want to fuck me, I guess.
Who cares?
But,
yes, great, do it.
But where is that going to end?
Top of the Empire State Building.
Probably. I mean, that's where a lot of things end and begin. But he, but apparently in order to send a book to prison, I think it has to come from, I don't know. You can't send it yourself. I don't know. It was like I was stoned one night and I was like, I'm doing this. And then like, it was one of those things where the next morning I had like Post-it notes or like, remember to send to Luigi. And then I was like, I'm not in the mood to do this morning. So who knows if I'll ever get it sent.
No. If it comes back, set it free.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
Wait, I forgot what sparked us on this, which I love. But
just like not wanting to lose my mind entirely.
Yeah. Well, that's I always joke, one of my biggest fears, and I think it comes from, you know, obviously anyone's wound. But one of the things that stopped me from creating was a fear of going crazy, a fear of losing my mind. That was like my core, and like my reality being manipulated. And so, like, a lot of the things that drove me, I was like, does this make sense? Does this, like, and I had to take that leap of faith to say something that I thought was crazy. Before then, of course, everyone was like, me too. And my example I always use is the episode of Buffy where it's one of the most dismantling episodes in all of television, but it's like a few seasons in, and her mom, who has passed away, is all of a sudden like talking to a doctor in an insane asylum. And he's like, she thinks she's the Slayer again. She's talking about it. And one of my fears was like, okay, sure, like this is a simulation. Like, what if I made all this up? But the fear wasn't like I made it up. I was like, what if I made this all up and I'm not the Slayer? Like, if I'm making this all up and I'm not even the lead, the fuck? What's wrong with me?
Yeah, totally. I get that.
And so I'd love to dip into that because you talking about like the fear of going crazy. I'm like, say that, heard from in the back here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely am someone who has let their emotions and mental health issues take the better of them before and take the steering wheel of the car and drive it in directions it didn't need to be driven in, but I maybe it did ultimately, but in the moment was not necessarily a good experience, and it's always something that's sort of like nagging at behind, and I feel like it's always sort of like outside the door, like it could come in at any second, and you know, I'm very, very medicated and in therapy and constantly, you know, checking in on that stuff, but it's something I know is in there and never going to go away, and it's something I need to live with, and hopefully it's a nice roommate and not like a roommate that you know, leaves pizza boxes everywhere and doesn't, you know, flush the toilet. Like, I have to work with it. I have to collaborate with it and coexist with it. So it's a daily thing to work on. And some days are very difficult and some days are very easy and some days or most days are a murky thing in the middle. But I think like, it's like, yes, everyone's experiencing some form of that. So it's like you're not that fucking special. Like you have your own issues, but everyone has their own issues. And the Elaine Stritch quote, everyone has a sack of rocks. Like we all have our own shit we're going through and navigating on a day-to-day basis. And I think like the key to life is like, and being decent in the world is like remembering that like at every second of every day and every person you encounter, they're going through some kind of shit that you're not aware of. And so I think like for me, like the finding the grace with that is like trying to find the grace with like the world and like of like everyone's going through that. It's not just you. It's not just like Alice in Wonderland. You're not Alice. Like it is Wonderland and we're all in it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I like have a belief that it's very like parallel to yours, but it's that every single person is the most special person.
Sure. Yes.
And every single person, you know, and like, because I'm kind of going like, I think maybe it's the way I've survived, but like when I see the messy roommate, right? Like the person that leaves pizza boxes and is disrespectful. And right, this gets me hurt sometimes, but I go, well, they're hurting and I love them more than anything. Like that shadow is hurting.
Right.
And so I do think we're very similar in that, but it's like this idea that it's like, yeah, we are all the leads and special that way, like, and unique, but that is what connects us is that everyone's having the same experience.
Is that we all are equal in the fact that we're all on like on a horribly bumpy road. And it's like, that's just what the road is. And it can be hard to, for me, remember that and stick with that on a day-to-day basis, especially in this like entertainment industry sort of, you know, cesspool that does sort of, you know, put people on pedestals and there are these moments of like big successes and small successes and big failures and small failures in the way that it's interpreted in the world, you know, and it's very, for me, it's very easy to fall victim to, and prey to like that, like of those big menacing things.
The industry is also like a massive gaslight.
Totally,
like
100%.
So,
and so it's like, you know, you have like a moment where it's like, okay, this week I've got my name on Deadline and there's an article out about some bullshit thing I'm working on and I'm getting text messages from people and DMs from people and like heart eye emoji things on the Instagram story and all that shit that makes you feel fucking good. And then like, you know, that project doesn't go or 2 months later, you're, you know, broke and bored and wondering what the fuck you're doing with your life. And like the fact that no one's sending you that shit is all of a sudden like so hurtful and powerful and big. And it's like something I keep working on is just like kind of with the big and the small, the good and the bad, like always just sort of like picking it up, looking at it and putting it down and walking away, whether it's like praise or rejection. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's definitely something I find myself constantly working on.
Wait, that's the hard part because it's like someone. Oh my God, what an affirmation! There's a beautiful goldfinch right outside my window. That's really nice. But it's so what I think is vulnerable about what you do is that the genuine brave thing, like everyone is experiencing this, and everyone is like kind of like not talking about the sickness of the like constant compare, the constant whatever. And so then you, who is bold enough to say the thing out loud, people who are frightful are like, oh, like even though it's ringing in them so completely, right? They're like, oh, well, that's a you thing or that's a whatever. And so it's like, it's going to be so healing to so many people, you know, because of their perception of you to like be like, oh, you had those thoughts? Oh, I'm not a bad person for that. Oh, I could still be an artist. Like, I think that lifts a lot of shame from people.
That's nice of you. And I agree, you know, I mean, I think like my favorite artists have always been the people who are super upfront and sometimes dangerously so for the sake of their reputations and careers about how they feel on a daily basis and like how they put themselves out in the world and what the emotions they don't choose to hide. I don't really do I don't do the same thing as her, but I love like Rosie O'Donnell is one of my favorite creatives that has ever been. And what is so powerful to me about her is she has an inability to lie about how she feels, and it's what is my
deeply authentic,
deeply,
good or bad.
But for good or for and like it's why she's very polarizing to a lot of the people in the world, and it's why a lot of people see her as this sort of unhinged kind of overly emotional person who had to quit The View twice and all these things, and it's because it's someone who truly is not capable of like putting on that fake smile and
performance,
pretending like the world is perfect, and it's some people are really good at that. And some people are like really, really, really bad at it. And it's the people who are really, really bad at that I tend to gravitate towards. And I think she's someone who does that so beautifully.
Completely. I always laugh because I think the celebrities that triggered me when I was young are those people. And it was because I was like used to like having to like be perceived in a certain way and make sure I was perceived. So when I saw those people not care or like, rustle feathers, it was like, and now it's like, oh, God bless ya. I think like sometimes you say the worst things ever. God bless you for that.
100%, 100%. Like it's why I tend to like, I like a lot of people that are sometimes say things I don't even agree with, but it's just like, I appreciate, unchecked authenticity in a big way. 'Cause I think obviously there's less and less of it in that like we are so curated and filtered and everything's so planned and nothing's very messy, and it's like,
no, there's no mess.
Yeah. And it's like the people that are on the messier side are always going to be the ones that are saying the things that for me at least like connect to my truth.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate pina colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
I'm interested if you're actively aware of this like wider perspective, because that's one of the things that stood out to me was like, I forget the exact quote, but you were saying that when you were doing sex work, part of the like thing that was like, either providing you comfort or affirmation or keeping you through was that you were part of a story. You were part of the people who had come before you and done sex work. And like, for me, that happens a lot where it's like, if I'm in a hard time, I'm kind of like, yo, like this is part of my story. Totally. Like that's the perspective that keeps me moving forward.
Totally.
Because I'm not stuck in that moment. And so I'm wondering if that's like an active thing you do, because you even just did it with like, I don't agree with them, but I love these people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a broad perspective, which is nice.
I had a teacher in the very brief period I spent at North Kona School of the Arts, who was this very groovy, very spiritually evolved teacher who I don't even know what fucking class she was teaching. I think it was supposed to be an acting class.
That's very groovy.
But it was like, I think it was an acting class, but it wasn't. It was like very, very emotionally in touch. And her name was Ashley Gates, and she was fabulous to a teacher. And one of the big things we first did was she had us sit down and think about who was in our tribe of looking at artists. And like, it was just such a powerful thing to like look at like not your tribe being like, I want to be like Marlon Brando when I grow up. It's not not that. It's like who on an emotional creative
resonates.
Level are you like truly connecting with? And I do feel in the moments when the things about myself I don't like and where things don't go my way or whatever, it's those people that I find comfort with. It's the ones that are
comfort is such a good word for it.
Of like, I mean, the feeling of not being alone is obviously wildly powerful. And I think like, seeing things as like, oh, I'm part of a legacy of this, with the sex work, I'm part of a legacy of artists who did this to support themselves while they made their art, like, or any sort of experience I've had of like looking around and finding the people that I feel a connection to who have been in a similar experience or situation has always been like really helpful and important to me.
Is that like when you're in it, you reach for that thought, or is that like sort of your organic worldview?
I mean, I think it's my organic. Is it organic? I don't know if it's organic, but maybe it's organic because I do feel like
it could be.
Yeah, maybe it is, but it's definitely something I naturally reach toward. But it's definitely something that in my darker moments, in the moments where I am either really triggered or about something or just really depressed about something, I do find it harder to identify and access that stuff in a healthy way and like look at myself as not alone. That definitely in those moments requires like another step of like forcing myself to be active to do that. But I don't think it's something I have to work that hard on a day-to-day basis. I do think that like
No, it sounds like a worldview.
Yeah. I'm usually really good at like immediately, like when I meet someone, knowing if they're like part of that, like if they're going to be and how they're going to react to like myself, who can sometimes not like have a filter or sometimes overshares, as you can see from my book, and or sometimes
I loved it.
goes too far or whatever. Like I can tell usually when I meet someone like who's going to be able to like hang with that kind of energy and who's not.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is like who's going to understand the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you go to a party and the intention is someone who just wants to hear themselves talk.
Yeah.
But if you're, when you share your intention is like, I'm trying to find an emotion we're connecting on and a story and like I'm going to share, and it's like you can tell the people who will get that energetically like right off the bat.
Totally. 100%. And I can always also tell the alternative of like the people who are going to be like, oh, this guy's a lot. And avoid those people. I would try to.
Avoid those people because it's like, I might be a lot for you. And like, great, good that you feel that way. And then I just won't be like, I don't need to feel that way.
Yeah,
so
precisely.
See you.
Precisely.
But okay, so I'm actually really excited because we're talking about this process and this awareness and this grace that you're talking about and this forgiveness for yourself. So in your process of like then showing yourself to the world, you talk about how you're not crazy about your first 2 books. And I'm interested how that ties in here because you are actively like forgiving yourself and also that part of you, those people that put those books out, right? Pave the path for this book to be out.
Totally.
And so like, I'm very interested in like your relationship with that right now.
Yeah. Well, so the first 2 books that I talk about that in my new book, but I don't like acknowledge really anymore. Like it's like, so both of them.
I know, but I'm like, why?
So yeah, because I wrote these 2 YA novels and I like those, but the 2 books that I wrote before that, I like never, like I don't have credited. And because I will say I was quite young when I wrote both of them.
Okay.
And both things came not from inspiration, but from necessity. And and by necessity, I don't even know but it wasn't even like enough money for it to like make sense. It was like necessity of ego.
Necessity at the moment.
And ego and like wanting to be able to say I'm writing a book at a party as opposed to like I want to write this book. And so one was from like I had like a early YouTube viral thing and like there was like a thing pitched sort of someone approached me about writing a book and then it ended up being this other thing. And it was just like, it just wasn't great. And it wasn't inspired. And it was like a chore to write. And I didn't feel good about it. Like as I was writing it once it was out, it was just like, ugh. And then the other one was like, again, similar that I had like it was called 50 Shades of Gay. And it was like, literally I wrote my literary agent. I was like, could I write sell that. And it was like when when 50 Shades of Grey was popular, and he was like, I'm sure you could.
Yeah, that's the time.
And I sold it to like
a lot of shows got made off that.
Totally. And I sold it to like and I saw it kind of as like a parody, but then it actually sold to like an actual romance fiction like publishing company, and then they published it, but like they also
that's high performance art if they take it seriously.
It was so weird. Yeah. And like the weirdest thing was they like in the copy edit process, they like sent me they printed out the manuscript and wrote their notes in it. And it got lost in the mail, and there was only one copy. So then it never really got copy edited. And so like when you...
Wait, do we believe that actually happened?
I'm told... I have no idea. I was also like 25, 26. And so I was just sort of I was like, whatever. And so then it came out, and like it was just like a typo on every page.
So it came out with no...
And it was like... I mean, I have it. Where is it?
With no edits?
I have it here somewhere. Where is it? Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. Wait, this makes me so happy. Okay. I love this.
And then here's what's funny. Because it was also like, it wasn't printed either. It was like an ebook that you had to like, you could buy it as an ebook, or you could buy it like on Amazon, but like, it was like printed if you bought it. Like it wasn't like printed.
Yep.
But then they sold the rights to Germany. And now here it is in, I have it in German, and it's so weird. But like the cover, it's like a funny book.
It's so
but
horny.
it's like full. I mean, it's a hot picture, but it's like so
this is a dream
horny.
come true. Are you joking
so
me?
Strange. Apparently there's an epilogue. I haven't read it in a long time. I know that it also came out. That's this one. It also came out in India.
Oh my God.
And
oh my God.
I don't know what that fucking teapot is. And
is it steaming like what? Like chai? Like what?
I don't know. Fun and smart and utterly fabulous. I mean, it's embarrassing. And
no. Here's what you need to do. I'm gonna be your manager now.
Okay.
You need to lean into this. Pretend that this is the most serious thing you've ever done, and live in performance art for the rest of your life. And literally, and live in the Danielle Steele space, and let no one know that you know that it's a joke.
And I love Danielle Steele, and I love that idea.
Okay.
And at the time, I was like, okay, I'm doing like a Jacqueline Susann thing, but it's like, it was like but no one else was like on board. You know what I mean? Like it was like it looked like this, but I was trying to do Jacqueline Susann. But
I mean, that cover is one of the best things I've ever seen. You should frame that. That would go incredible next to your movie posters.
Funny, it's so funny, and I think I've never listened to it, but there's an audio version of it I saw on Audible.
In German or English?
That one's in English, and I've never listened to it. But are
they horny in it? Like, what are they doing?
Horny. Like, it is like...
I know, but the person reading it? Like...
I have no idea. I know that I remember a friend of mine read it a couple years ago, or tried to, I think, and I don't think he finished it. Yeah. But he was like, use the term ropes of cum like 4 times.
Horny.
But I literally just took the 50 Shades of Grey book and like went chapter by chapter, and then just sort of like wrote a synopsis of it and then copied it. That's all I did.
Gay.
I think I wrote it in like 2 weeks or something. Yeah, it's like make it gay. Yeah. Reference the Real Housewives here. Okay. Yeah.
I'm literally so happy I'm asking about this, because I was curious just to whether like what part of you was like pushing yourself away from it. And now it's even funnier because it's not like a shame part. It's like...
No, it's just like, it was not good. It was just like... And I remember at the time, like it coming out and like, I don't think a single one of my friends read it. Like, I don't think a single friend bought it. Like, but because I also didn't even get paid up front to write it. Like I was like, I had like a deal where I'd get paid like as it sold. And it's to this day, the only book I've ever written that I actually still get royalties from, because it like didn't have an advance to make back. So it like actually every so often I'll get like a check for $100 for 50 Shades of Gay in German.
You're doing such a service for the community. Do you know how many people have come to that book? Do you know how many people?
That's probably true. I do want to believe that.
That's real. I think and you're providing people pleasure, relief, heaven.
I think that's true.
Oh, that makes me so happy. Here's what I hope. You know, like the thing where it's like someone's like working and then a gig happens and then something they made 100 years ago becomes the most successful thing.
That would be really fun. It would be really fun if 50 Shades of Gay all of a sudden was like my thing. Like all of a sudden they adapt it becomes like the red, white, and royal blue of like next summer.
It's It could. I'm just saying it could. It's like, so you're on this book tour and you're like, actually, can we get back to self-sabotage? Okay.
Yeah. I just want to make sure what kind of tea we're cooking in the movie based on the cover, because that's some hot tea.
A design person had to sit there and be like,
there's no tea in this book either. That's what's so strange. It's like, huh.
But it's steamy.
I guess it's steamy. Yeah, it is steamy.
That's so heaven. That is, but it's also, you know what breaks my heart about those moments is like what you're very open about in the book, which I adore, is like just like the way you make in relation and isolation, like the way you create bouncing back and forth between those two. And I look at something like that. Like I even like another dear friend, you know, who's successful that we know, like I messaged something that they had done years ago and they're like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed by that. Or
sure.
like, and you're not embarrassed, but like what,
maybe.
but what breaks my heart a little bit, right, is I go like, I wish more of us had the community around us in those times that we couldn't possibly have had to be like, how silly and fun.
Yeah.
So we didn't build that sort of shame or like experience. Because I have those things where it's like, we could just laugh about this.
Totally.
But you're alone, so you 100%.
Can't. The other day I found someone sent me I talk about this in the book. I hosted like a Snapchat, like I don't know, fucking series.
You're like the words Camila Cabello. Yeah.
This was like celebrity conspiracy theories, and it was like very silly, very, very silly. But someone sent me, who had read the early copy of the book, found the trailer for it. It's still on E's website of me hosting this thing, and I was watching it, and at the time I like had so much shame about it, and it was like I just did it because I needed the money and and like I watched the trailer a couple days ago and was like, oh, this is actually kind of good. It's like, how do I export this and put it on my reel? Like this is fun.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Isn't that so nice?
Yeah.
Like have been in like the healing process long enough that you're like, good for that.
Totally.
Like you're looking back at that. That's so lovely.
That is, yes, I agree.
Because everything was so tied to our creative worth. Totally. And so it's like then when you took a gig, you were judging yourself, and then it's like to look back and be like, whatever, I killed that.
Totally. And but it's also a reminder that like you're gonna do that to yourself again. Like I'm going to do things that I'm like, oh, hopefully no one sees that, or hopefully no one reads that. Again, that in a decade later, I might have the grace to go, oh, actually, that's not shit at all. There's nothing
Are there
wrong with that.
parts of this book that you feel like a little bit more vulnerable about, like specifically, or just all of it, or not?
I mean, I guess kind of all of it. I mean, I guess I feel more vulnerable in that it's like, sure is a lot of you in there. Like, it's just like,
sure.
It's
I know
like,
that feeling.
That's a lot. Like, okay. I mean, hopefully someone gives a fuck. Like, but not necessarily like topic wise. There's not really anything that I'm like, about, as far as the general public reading. I mean, there are certain like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, did I change that person's name enough that they're not going to like get upset and try to sue me? But and I think I did. But I that little things like that. But no, otherwise I feel like I have a good relationship to this particular like thing. For whatever reason.
Which is so nice. That's so beautiful. And like, it is so funny because it's like, well, we want more of you. It's the book about you, but it's that internal like,
it's that horrible thing. Yeah.
I think all of that's very exciting to like be feeling good about this, but also talk about when I was creating my play, like the idea of authentically telling my story at the same time as protecting my own safety in the ways of I have to live with people actively and like, or like how I'm perceived, like. And it wasn't even an ego way. It was like my own like active life I don't want to share because of the repercussions that could have. And the masks and lenses that you have to put on that. Was that a barrier to some of your expression? Because I had to work through that pretty actively.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. It was definitely a barrier to work through, for sure. I mean, and I think a lot of that came from like not rushing it and not, kind of what I was talking about earlier of like, okay, it wasn't time to write those stories when I first started to try to write some of this stuff down 15 years ago. Like it just wasn't time yet. And so I think so much of that is like just knowing the right time to explore these things. And I think if you're in that place, for me at least, I'm not worried about the filter or any of that stuff. I'm feel like confident in putting it all out there for better or worse.
Yeah. So for you, was it like they were all cooking up here that whole time, or like you would write one and then let it simmer for years?
I mean, some of it was stuff that I'd like started to write something of, and some of it was like years ago, or like some of it was stuff like little things I maybe like performed on stage, like a little this story I've done a version of, and some of it just stuff I've written in my journal. A lot of it was stuff I went through all my old journals, but like. I think once I wrote like the book proposal, it was like, all right, like I know I got to write about this, this, and this. And it's a couple of them were like things where I was like, oh, that feels like a lot to get into. So I, kind of put it off. But, I got to them in their own time.
How was going through your old journals?
That was so weird. Well, I just have such horrible handwriting that it's like get it together, and it's horrible. I have like truly the worst handwriting in the world, and so half of the time I have no idea what the fucking journal said. But but it's I mean it's you go and you're like, you were obsessed with that guy for that long? Oh my god! Or like you auditioned for Rock of Ages on Broadway. I didn't remember doing that, but I apparently did, and apparently had a really hard time when I didn't get a call back, So it's like,
Which is so endearing, because you're like, obviously it wasn't about Rock of Ages. I don't even remember.
I don't even remember doing that.
Hard.
Yeah. But I apparently I certainly wrote about it for a few weeks afterwards, that's for sure.
You're like, you kind of think you wrote about it because you see a capital R, and then you see an O, and then you see an A, and that's all you know. It just
like, okay, I guess we're still on the Rock of Ages thing. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Context tells me.
Yeah.
Oh, I adore this. Well, I'm like, I have so many things I want to talk to you about, but we are coming to my closing segment, which can take a minute, and we can infuse it with some things. But I do that. Have you listened before?
Yeah, I have.
So you know what a poem is. I'm trying to think always of a succinct way to like introduce it to listeners who maybe are listening for the first time. Yeah. But thank you for holding my poems as a segment. And I think you're primed for this because it's, a moment when someone or something carries us unfinished and sees us, or we carry for them, or we have an impact. And poems are abstract, but it is a moment that has such a beautiful impact, and it can be as small as a barista giving you a compliment, or as big as, painting the Sistine Chapel, which I'm sure was a poem to Michelangelo. And I'm excited to hear your poems just because I think you've had so many loving and confusing but beautiful moments with all these powerful mentors and relationships. And I feel like you've held a lot of poems for a lot of people. And in reading it, that was like very apparent even in these stories. So I'm very excited to hear any poems that you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, and it's because I talk about it in the book, but like just in my relationship and my mentorship with the actor Gary Beach in general was such a, like, when I look at that, with this question, I think it's such a beautiful way to phrase it, seeing it as a poem. But like when I look at that relationship in my life and like what it did for me and what he taught me, and just like he wasn't my teacher, he wasn't we never worked together or anything like that, but just socially and having this sort of, he was a older gay man from pre-AIDS generation, and I was literally like 19, and he became one of my closest friends and really took me under his wing. And I think like looking at that, I'm like, what a poetic, beautiful experience. And just sort of the idea of intergenerational friendships, especially with like that generation of gay men and the one that came after, or a few after actually, is something that is just so beautiful and profound and rare, because there were so few of those men left, and nowadays even less. And it's like, I think it's something to hold and to honor, and to I'm always still seeking out that. in some form of another. Like I'm reading this book right now, The Loves of My Life, which is Edmund White, who's one of my favorite authors. He's like a gay author.
I have to read that.
It's brilliant. He's a gay author who's written like 5,000 books. But he has this new memoir out it's a sex memoir. And it's like about every man he's ever had a sexual encounter with or dated or fallen in love with or whatever. And it's so beautiful, and it's very much a glimpse in a lot of it of that era, of that pre-AIDS generation. And it's like, I gravitate towards that. And I think that those are the type of stories, and that era itself and that generation is a poem. And I think it's good for the world to seek it out, especially if you're, you know, a young queer person, or a not so young, if you're me, queer person. Like it's important
spiritually young
to connect with those things, I think, because it really, like, you know, can change your life, and it certainly makes you have perspective and gratitude for, you know, as insane a time this is, how profoundly lucky we are in so many ways.
I love this poem. I do, because, I myself have had a couple of gay, you know, we always call them gay dads, but from that pre-AIDS era.
Totally.
And part of the healing wisdom, especially I think, because there are mentors in this community, but there is sometimes sexual dynamics.
Totally.
That's just how it is.
100%.
And so to have one that, and so to, like, it's so healing to also, from that generation, like, they did witness so much. So they just like hold space in a different way.
Totally.
And it's such a parental healing that so few queer people got to experience that it's just so important.
Yeah. And and I think it's now, you know, I mean, it's something that it only dawned on me like in the past couple of years, that it's like, oh, you're now the older gay guy at the party. Like, you're no longer, like, I was at like,
do you feel this way?
I'm starting to. Like, I was at a dinner party this was a few months ago, and I literally like was talking to everybody and schmoozing. I didn't really know anyone there. And like, it's like it's dawning on me, they're all talking about like being a freshman in college during COVID. And I'm like, yeah. So the dorm, you had to leave the dorm. You left the dorm. Okay. Yeah. Same. And it was just like
powerful choice.
One of these things where I looked around and I was like, oh, fuck, I'm becoming older. I mean, I'm only 38, but still, like, when you're in a room of like 22-year-olds, you know, it feels like a big difference. And it didn't until I realized it. And something though that I keep now looking at is like the relationships I had with like older gay men, who the ones that didn't try to just see me as a sexual object, that was because I was 22 and cute, like, and I'm trying to be that person in the future, and as I get older and older.
But that's also why it's so powerful, because you saw that modeled, so you know how important those boundaries are. And like, I think so many people would benefit from that. And like, and I'm like, I appreciate you for sharing this poem, but I'm also curious to like how you were able to process the loss of him. Like, I think in 2018, was it?
Yeah, it was a few months after we got married. Yeah, 2018. You know, he died kind of suddenly, but he had been not ill, but he'd been older and not in great shape for a couple of years. And so it wasn't like, it was surprising, but it wasn't like the biggest shock of my life. And, you know, it was strange, but also like, I felt like he'd had a great life. And I also felt like he felt very much like completed. Like it wasn't like someone who, I lost another like older gay mentor friend back in August who'd had cancer for a while. And like, I felt like had a lot of unfinished business. And whereas Gary, I was like, I feel like you don't have unfinished business. Like, I feel like you on an emotional level have like processed the things that you need to process as you grow up. And I think career wise, I think he'd accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish. And like, love relationship wise, he'd had a wonderful marriage for like 30 years. And it's like, you know, that's as fucking good as it's going to get, man. So like, I felt.
But did that make it easier for you to process then?
I think so. I'm just like, Good for you. Like there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
I'm not like, oh, fuck, you never got to do this. You never got to da-da-da-da.
Yeah, there wasn't
and
that.
It's like,
yeah.
I felt like, and like, what a great example of a life that I was like, okay, yeah, you kind of checked off all the boxes you wanted to check off. And that's how lucky, like how truly lucky. So yeah.
It is. Now I'm like, part of me is like, now I'm going to be on a thing. I was like, we have to be elders. Like, we have to be elders.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because it is so powerful. It is so impactful.
It is. It's very
and
important.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, and like they are the people that make you think, like, I can write a book. Like, and I thank God for them.
Absolutely. Like, yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Oh. Well, I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to share. I can't believe we're to the end.
This has just been so lovely. I think you're so delightful.
This has been so lovely.
Yeah, just really nice to talk to you. And
I appreciate you so much.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me and enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Please buy the book and then also the audiobook because it's fun to listen along.
Yeah.
And then you also get to purchase twice, which is nice.
Like that.
And you're supporting an artist. And I end every episode by giving the listeners and you a compliment. And I say, oh my God, you're so pretty.
Oh, you're so pretty. You really are.
You're so pretty. Thank you. Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek is hosted by me, Mo Fry-Pasek. You can learn more about this week's guest and the Worse Than You team by checking out the show and episode copy. Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek is executive produced by Erica Ghetto, Mariah Gossett, and Lauren Mandel for Good Get and Disco Nap Productions. Oh my God, you're so pretty.
Where is that going to end?
Top of the Empire State Building.
Probably. I mean, that's where a lot of things end and begin.